Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Marvel Movie Talk right here on Geekscape. So excited to be here. We have some Marvel news, we have some alternates talk, and we have alternates talk on top of that. As always, I am Christian Bladt. Next to me is Michael X Shirley, making the X popular long before everyone else, putting the X in everything. Michael Shirley, thank you, sir.
It's me. Thanks.
And of course, Count Eric Conner. I've never actually seen the paperwork. You're just a self-proclaimed count, but that's all right.
It takes a
And
while in 2023
yeah,
to go through all the red tape to be formally recognized. But thank you. I appreciate you trusting me on this.
and of course, we welcome back to the show our friend Jordan Blum. Jordan, thank you for being here. Obviously, we're happy to have you any day, but let's just start out right away by mentioning that if you go to your local comic book shop right now, like at this very minute, the two that I like actually just opened 15 minutes ago. So you can get the Alternates, which is your new series in the Minor Threats universe, which is a show excuse me, not a show yet, which is a book that we had you on to talk about a few times. So take a quick moment and explain the Alternates, and then we'll dive in a little bit more in depth. But I just wanted to make sure we get to it at the top of the show.
Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for having me back, and very excited to talk alternates with you. Our alternates, and then alternates in the Marvel universe. But ours is our first spinoff from Minor Threats from Dark Horse, and it is sort of a love letter to the early days of Vertigo, where you would have your Animal Mans, your Swamp Things, your kind of C-list characters who were, pulled into these kind of mature reader stories. So ours is kind of a metatextual tale of a bunch of C-listers who were, who go over to this mirror universe and then end up spending 3 years as these sort of better versions of themselves in these bigger stories, these kind of 4-dimensional stories, and then they're pulled back into their superhero universe where they are thrown into their old lives and they're sort of having withdrawal. And it's a story about addiction, of being rebooted and missing the old life you had when you were a much more interesting, powerful superhero, and them kind of coming together when they discover that stuff from this alternate reality has made its way over this energy into their world as a street level drug that is warping reality. So it's kind of up them to stop it or possibly give into it and go back to these old lives. So
Yeah,
it's a weird one.
the takeaway, of course, is always for the kids out there: drugs are bad, but drugs from an alternate reality timeline are even worse. So
Yeah.
it's important that you double down on that. And yeah, and for people who may or may not remember, you were also at the helm of the MODOK TV series, and I talked to you about that. How one of my favorite things was the usage of C and D list characters like the armadillo and some of the others. So I do love the idea from Minor Threats and also here in the alternates that these are, yes, these are all unique, fully, 100% created by you and your team. No patent pending, no lawsuits pending, but you kind of get the feel like, oh yeah, I can think of a character that's like this that would be in this situation. And yeah, you can just imagine sort of the support groups that would build up around it.
Yeah, it's a support group for rebooted superheroes who are missing the other lives they once lived. And I think,
Right.
how weird it would be if one day you're the Doom Patrol and you're in these kind of, giant DC crossovers and you're hanging out with Superman, and then the next month Grant Morrison is writing your life, and it's very different than
Yeah.
the previous month.
Right. Yeah. You're
Whiplash you would get.
you're Kitty Pride trapped on Muir Island, in like a canister, trying to not disintegrate it completely. And then at some point you're like, did I used to be one of the X-Men? What happened? Now I can't even have a solid hand. And yeah, it's interesting to think about, because the lineup changes, obviously for team books with the creative people a lot of times. And it would have been funny if one time it was like, somebody forgot to tell Ben Grimm that She-Hulk moved into the Baxter building. And we're like, oh yeah, we just want to go a different way. Bands do that a lot. They're like, yeah, we got somebody new, you're out. But we forgot to tell Benji. But I love the idea of, sort of the fallibility, I guess, of these superpowered characters and how difficult it can be to deal with all of that. And we will talk more about the book, and we will talk about some of our favorite characters from the book. And of course, we'll talk about our favorite alternate timeline, alternate time travel story, Marvel characters. So if you start thinking about that, all of our great friends in the chat, you can start suggesting those. But if you do me a favor and wait until we're talking about it to suggest them, it'll be a lot easier for me to find it in the chat. But please, whenever you want to put them in there, go ahead. But we do have a little bit of news. Obviously, the next big MCU project is Loki next month, but the next in the theaters will be the Marvels. And what I think is a great IMAX poster. Obviously, we've got Carol Danvers front and center. We've got Ms. Marvel, and I actually don't think they've told us. Are they calling her Sentinel? I mean, she's not going to be the other Captain Marvel like she was when I started reading comics. But Monica Rambeau, Marvel character of a name that I don't think we know yet. And if they've announced it, Daniel Drew in the chat will tell me right now. But it's a pretty cool looking poster, and letting you know that IMAX is the way to see it. And obviously I want to describe it for our audio audience, and also our audio audience is gonna miss out a little bit, because what I've learned about doing this sort of thing, doing shows on YouTube, is that whenever possible, it's in your best interest to not share videos where you play the sound. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take a look, and we're going to see what they're calling a new look. And, we're getting to see the characters. It's very quick. It's 30 seconds. It's not, I don't know, maybe it's going to be a television spot, but they're doing a good job of hyping you up for the movie. And I'm removing like 80% of that hype by not playing the music. But, just kind of seeing a lot of it, getting to see Kamala Khan in action with Carol and with Monica Rambeau. I don't know. It's exciting to me, and I hope that this does well. I know that there's a little bit of some mixed results for recent output from the MCU. But as you look at that, Jordan, what are your thoughts for the Marvels, which is our next big screen foray into the MCU?
Well, I have the same question about Monica. If they're calling her Photon, or they're calling her what? And she got her own poster, and I think it says Captain Rambeau is what they're calling her.
Interesting. Okay.
Like Commander Rambeau, Captain Rambeau, something like that. Yeah.
I guess we can work with that. I mean, that's it's not the best. It's not the best on the action figure packaging, which Jordan, I know, is you and I both feel like that's fairly important.
But I bet you. I bet you a running gag will be Kamala wanting to name her a superhero name, and Photon will be thrown out. That feels like she's a fangirl. She's not going to stand for her not having a code name. That'll probably be a running gag, I bet.
It's kind of a tradition going back to Batman Forever, when when Chris O'Donnell is trying to figure out what he should be called, and one of the names he throws out is Nightwing. So it's always like, hey, we know you. We know what you want it to be. We can hear that. I want to know what you think, Michael, about these images. You were complimenting that poster before we started. What are your thoughts? I know you won't go see it in IMAX or the theater, but whatever, 45, 60 days when it ends up on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
What's your excitement level?
I hope for the best. I always expect the worst. I think all the young female readers and all the people that came out to see Captain Marvel and made it such a good turnout. I feel like they'll be back for this. I think it'll be more exciting to see this female team. I love a female team. I loved when They made the X-Men an all-female team for a little bit.
Yeah.
That was just the craziest thing
And I
to
mean,
me.
there's a good chunk of the '80s where it was the X-Women parentheses and Wolverine. You know,
Yeah,
it was like they weren't getting him out, but it was it's true.
We all know that the women kind of carry the Marvel universe, and I think Marvel's been pretty open about, you know, agreeing and knowing that, you know, their female characters really round out and make their universe. Very cool poster. I want to see what Kamala's outfit looks like. That looks very Captain America like. I don't know.
It looks like they've probably they've like souped it up for her to go out into space. You know, it seems like it's that trick. You know, but in some of the scenes that we were showing earlier, I do think that it looks very reminiscent to the suit that we saw, you know, on the TV series. It's just, you know, I feel like it's going to be a little bit flashier, you know, in some way, shape, or form. Eric, as you take a look at that, and we'll kind of run that off to the side again on mute. But as you look at all this, Eric, your thoughts about the Marvels?
Yeah, I'm very much excited about it, and in a, you know, not calling Michael Shirley cynical. I have lots of words to describe Michael Shirley. Cynical would never be one of them. But
it's not even noon, and you're throwing shade. Okay,
no, not at all. There's love, just love. It's a Rosh Hashanah tomorrow, man. It's a new year.
Oh yes,
happy and healthy one. To one of you. The other two, whatever.
I know I'm about to derail things, but I did like how every year Letterman would interact with Paul Schaefer, and it would be some variation of, it's Rosh Hashanah. I'm probably going to be writing, 5788 on my checks for, until March, until Purim. I can't quite remember what it was, but anyway, back to what you were talking about, sir.
For a translation of that joke, please find us on X or any of the social media platforms. I'm genuinely excited about this. I think, we've talked about, the Young Avengers, a female-led Young Avengers feels like the thing they're just down the street from. And I know they have 25 projects in the queue, not to mention another 20 they seem to have set up in these, various movies in this phase. But this one feels like, it's a smart variation of what they've done. It looks like it has a good energy to it. I don't know if any of us were, I can't speak, Jordan, I don't recall if we talked about Captain Marvel with you. Maybe not one of the home run MCU films, but Brie Larson clearly is a great actor, a good presence on screen. And I mean, Miss Marvel was such a treat as a show, and even just a little bits of the trailer showing her interacting with them. I would like to see them though, as good as the actor was who played Monica, you didn't get much from her. Like, I couldn't sit here and tell you 5 personality traits about her based off the show, based off of WandaVision. But I do hope they sort of balance her so she's not just kind of like, I don't know, the straight man of the three of them. Because obviously in the comics, it's an interesting character. So I just hope, and I've yet to see in these trailers exactly what she as a persona is bringing to the table. But I'm genuinely excited about this film. And yeah, Marvel needs a success. They absolutely need this thing to, and not just in financial, but to actually click with people, to make people talk and get excited again about the franchise.
We talked about how it's obviously good for the film to push the release date when you feel like it needs more work and it's not ready. But the thing that you can't push is the movie tie-in Happy Meal schedule. So they burned through the Happy Meal toys back in June. Are you going
to flaunt them again?
No, I actually, you know what? That was definitely something I should have prepared, but I didn't see that we were going to be talking about this until earlier this morning. But yes, I do have a goose who sticks the tongue out, and But that goes a long way. It's because every time we drove by the Warner Brothers lot, and my daughter saw the big B that she knew meant Barbie, she would remind us that we were going to see the Barbie movie, and I was like, "Oh yeah, no, I know." So if every time we went to McDonald's, it turned into like, "Oh, Daddy, the Marvels is coming out November 12th." I'm like, I know, but I think that there's a lot of excitement, and Daniel Drew.
I feel like you're missing a big part here.
What's that
about? This is technically the first X-Men movie.
Yes,
Kamala is a member of the X-Men.
Right.
In the comics, she's the newest mutant.
They revealed her as a mutant on the TV show, and she is indeed. And there's also a mutant hound somewhere. You can guess which of the rectangles. But yeah, that's a great point. It's the first X-Man in the MCU. Just what we were talking about earlier, Daniel Drew said, "I don't think we've gotten a hero name yet for talking about Monica Rambeau. I assume she'll be Spectrum, but we will have to see." He wouldn't mind Photon either, whichever one. I think that the notion that we're not going to get one, at least not in this movie, just so long as they don't do one of many grievances with the Josh Trank Fantastic Four movie was that very last second when they're like, "I know what we should be called," and then it cuts to the logo of the Fantastic Four. I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't make anybody have to relive that. I'm sorry.
Well, I think anytime a comic book movie goes, "Isn't this silly that they're called this?" is like it's like the biggest slap in the face. I hate that. Like, just own it. Just own that you're called this and you're making a movie about this character. So I hate that trope a ton.
Yeah.
The eye rolling.
So
yeah.
We'll have more to talk about as it gets closer, and hopefully they're able to promote it in all the traditional ways, and personally, I don't have an investment in how much the box office is, but I would like it to be a success. I'd like Marvel to have a win. Put one in the W column.
Guardians was a win, right?
That's what I was going to ask. Actually,
Guardians 3
Guardians 3 a win? I mean, it made money. It did fine, but I mean, do you guys feel like Guardians 3 was like a little bit of a bounce back or not?
I did. I think it's my favorite. Whatever phase we're in, I don't remember what phase we're in, but it's my favorite one I've liked since, I don't know.
Yeah, it's like phase 4.5, or it's like phase 5 part 0. It's very hard to figure it out. It used to be easy to know which phase we were in, but they don't want to commit to the next phase. And I think the general reaction and obviously the financial success, that is a win, and they would like to follow it up with another one. I think my feeling is really the fact that we followed up the good feelings of that movie with Secret Invasion on
Good feeling.
And I won't Jordan, we did this show as like an after show, so every week we talked about the most recent episode.
It was like going to a wake every week. It was like sitting Shiva basically for the Marvel universe.
I didn't finish it, but I feel like what we're in now
it finished us.
It's not superhero fatigue. I hate that word.
Yeah,
it's bad thing fatigue, where everything got a pass for years. And if you're not good superhero content, people won't watch you. And I think like it just comes down to like the things that were successful this summer were Guardians and Spider-Verse, and those were good movies.
Yeah.
I was not a Guardians fan, you guys.
You didn't like it, huh?
When they killed Floor, I was like, this movie's horrible. This is killing me. Like that poor little rabbit.
But up until that point, the High Evolutionary had been fairly likable in your book.
And the otter, the poor little otter, it was just like, it just crushed me. It was like watching Dancer in the Dark. It just was like, what?
For Michael, it was 2.5 hours of basically that opening sequence of Up. It was just like, why are you showing us this?
That was my one thing, because I really enjoy the film, and anytime you use Space Hog effectively in a movie, because there's lots of ways you can use it less than effectively, you have me. But I thought the animal cruelty stuff maybe.
That
I mean,
was
you just saw I
hard.
had 2 dogs literally
Yeah.
jump all over me a second ago.
Yeah.
I thought that might have been a little bit. It's not so much I can't handle watching it. I thought that was maybe a little cheap, but the rest of it I thought was great. And Rocket
It's a fair
Raccoon is such
trigger.
a fabulous
It's a fair
character.
trigger warning, I think,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, you know, I mean, and I've seen that stuff before, but Rocket Raccoon as a character, I still
Mhm.
absolutely adore him, and I thought they found such interesting angles on him that deepened the storytelling. So
Yeah.
overall, I liked it quite a bit, but I also, Michael, totally see where you're coming from. It felt
Like
maybe a touch cheap emotionally to do that to
For
us.
me, the child inside of me would have probably had to been carried out of the theater. I probably would have just been losing my mind. Like when I was little, I went to see the movie The Witches with Angelica Houston.
Oh yeah,
And it was so bad. My dad had to take me out of the theater and bring me into the Jungle Book, which had been re-released. I couldn't handle
That is-
like what was
The
going
bare
on.
necessities will always settle you. You know,
Yeah.
I wish my dad had picked me up and brought me into the Jungle Book after I went to see the original animated Transformers the movie, and I watched all of my friends murdered on screen. You know, so yeah, I guess there's different ways to take it in. But
as a father, kids need that. I think they need
that's
Tough
true.
them up.
in their childhood love. I remember
And-
seeing like Last Unicorn and Watership
Yeah.
Down. You know, like that stuff.
Oh my
That
gosh.
was the vibe I got from Guardians 3. Those scenes was like those.
no,
I
I
mean,
got one.
Even
the horse,
even Bambi, you know, just Bambi's mom runs off, and you hear, you're
Yeah.
like, oh my god! I was like 6, and I'm
the
like, I
horse
know what
and
that
never-ending
means.
story.
Yes.
You know, and because he was depressed. It wasn't just that the mud got him, the sorrow got him. That was the
He
moment that
died because he
still.
gave up. That was the
Yeah.
death of that
Yeah,
horse.
you have
He
to
gave up.
fight.
Yeah.
All right, chat. Go ahead and tell us the most horrifying on-screen deaths that you've had to
Alternate
witness.
deaths,
And-
though, not right. You can't go with
No, it's
you know,
all right. And you know, I always feel bad for. I talk about this a lot, and I know it's a different universe, but we are talking about alternates. I have said repeatedly, if I never see Thomas and Martha Wayne die again,
I'm good on that.
I will be very
I'm
happy.
good.
We
Good
get
there.
it. It's sad.
The Lego Batman takedown of that though was brilliant.
I'm gonna give Lego Batman a pass. You know what I mean?
You know what's even better? Teen Titans Go to the Movies, because it's part of a montage where they're
That's
trying to go
right.
back in time and stop the origins of all the heroes. So they just take the Waynes and they go down this street, which is like Happy Street versus Crime Alley, and then they save them. Batman never happens. The future is all messed up. The villains take over, so they have to go back and make sure Krypton explodes. But so Robin takes the Waynes and pushes them into Crime Alley. You hear gunshots. And Bruce Wayne starts crying, and they're like, "We did it!" And then they move on. It's a great.
And by the way, we can talk about Teen Titans Go to the Movies on this show because Stan Lee has a cameo in it. So obviously, it makes it canon. So we'll find out what the Marvels will have to offer. But let's talk about the alternates, specifically, Jordan, your alternates again. And there are obviously, as always, there are some great variants. I believe this is a variant that
yes,
we're
so
looking
that's
at
Tim
for,
Seeley, who's also our co-writer,
Right.
did that one. That is Crab Louie and Mary, the multi-monster. And then they're carting away the Divider, who has the ability, a little bit inspired by Multiple Men, who can continually divide himself down into smaller and smaller versions. And he's not making it through the first issue. And there's a bit of a mystery surrounding his death that they all kind of team up and decide we got to figure out what's going on. And that's kind of where we start the series.
And as with Minor Threats, and you, of course, worked with him as the voice of MODOK, Patton Oswalt is a collaborator on this. And obviously, not just as the voice of MODOK, there is a strong tie to him for the MCU from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and a character we may or may not ever see him play from the end credit scene from actors from the Eternals. I'd love to see him as Pip the Troll. I don't see the Pip the Troll Disney Plus series on the slate anywhere, but maybe that's the next phase.
I have no inside information.
No, I'm sure you don't. But talk a little bit about collaborating with him. I think one of the reasons that I think people sort of gravitate towards him because he gets excited about the stuff we do. Like, I think he has unless I'm mistaken, but I feel like he has a monologue in as a cameo of in Parks and Rec, and they didn't write what he said. He just went off about Star Wars.
He riffed on a Marvel Star Wars. He predicted hey, let's buy all the toys and smash them all together corporate mentality that is running Hollywood right now. But I mean, he's one of us. He's a Wednesday warrior. He reads maybe more comics than I do a week. He's really good at keeping up with the big two, but also he's got this knowledge that surpasses me when it comes to like indies and new books and creators to look for. So he's got his finger on the pulse, and it's like what we talk about all the time. Obviously, we're working on other TV and film projects, but our love of comics kind of permeates everything we do, and it's so fun to just talk with someone who gets the deepest reference and can pull from the stuff. And obviously, the Alternates is heavily influenced by these Grant Morrison comics and Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman and stuff that was very popular in the 90s. And it's kind of us taking a look at why we love them and what does that mean to take a character and reboot them and change them. And what was interesting about those early DC comics was that it wasn't Vertigo yet. So like Animal Man, Doom Patrol, they had a foot still in the DC universe. And our ideas of what happened if you got pulled back into that, but you had the memories of being this, god of crustaceans, and you had to go back and become just a dad and an everyday superhero, and you'd be yearning for this other life. So that was kind of the genesis. And really, Tim Seeley came up with the idea of this book and brought it to Pat and I, and we were we're huge fans of Tim and all the books that he's done. So getting to work with him was amazing. And we just kind of had a writer's room, fleshing out the story, creating the characters. And, from there kind of just would send the scripts back and forth. And Scott Hepburn, who was our artist on Minor Threats, did this amazing cover right here, helped design some of the characters with Tim. And then we have Chris Mitten, who has worked on Hellboy, doing most of the interiors. And then Tess Fowler, who had done a cover for us on the previous Minor Threats, is doing our kind of flashbacks to this other world, this mature reader's world. So we have two different artists working on the book, and it was just a blast. It was just a jam. Everyone just kind of throwing ideas in, and it all kind of coalesced and made this book we're super proud of. That is, again, a love letter to a different section of comics, whereas the first Minor Threats was much more about your kind of like, Spider-Man D-lister foes who go and drink at the bar with no name. This one is kind of the weirder horror characters of a universe who kind of get pulled into a much bigger story. So, we're always influenced by what we read, and it's so fun to get to, expand the universe.
And obviously there's story types and things that come from from whatever we consume, movies, TV, whatever. And I remember when I first talked to you about Minor Threats, one of the things I liked about it was sort of like the Warriors vibe, where they had to get from one part of the city to the other, and were they going to survive it? And I always sort of love that thing. Now, Michael and Eric, you had a chance to also read the first two issues, and I wanted to give each of you a chance. Now, only the first issue is available this month. The issue 2 will be out next month, but issue 1 is available now wherever you get your comics. And I'll ask you first, Eric, your thoughts on the Alternates.
Well, first of all, I think Jordan, it was a bold move. You came on the Geekscape Bladt cast and you spoiled the end of the first issue. That's it's a unique way, but I
believe in the book so much that's not even the reason to read it.
Well, and that's one of the things that was so great about reading this was I felt like so much of this was this idea of like, you did this and now you're this. Like what? Yeah, and so suddenly it becomes like thematically so relatable. Maybe for a man of a slightly advanced age, like Michael, Shirley, or myself, where so much of what's great about these two issues is this idea of like they had the ride of their life, and what do you do when you get off the roller coaster? Who are they now? And I love that they're sort of trying to figure it out, and some of them, like, they have a support group, which I thought was amazing. Gave me some of the feels of, I don't know if you guys ever saw, I think it was called Small Fry. It was a Pixar short where it was all these toys from like McDonald's that were forgotten. If you've never
I
seen
think I do
it,
know the
it
one
is
you mean. Yeah.
yeah, it's brilliant. It's like Buzz is there because Mini Buzz replaced him, and it's like with a Ninja Kangaroo and all these toys that failed. But this idea of like, what are we, and then realizing, in essence, that maybe their lack of value to the world, but does that mean they're going to base their decisions about themselves on an outside perception? So you're dealing with these like huge, like very emotional, dramatic, very relatable themes. And I feel like, what you said before, it's not superhero fatigue we face in the cinematic universe. It's bad material fatigue, and this is such great material that it just reminds you, like, when the storytelling's good, when the characters are relatable, then you could sort of take them anywhere. And I love the specificity of the superhero side of it. Oftentimes I find myself frustrated with comics, with movies, where the exact powers is kind of nebulous, where you're sort of, I always go back to, like, what exactly is Aquaman's powers in the movies? Like, he seems to do a bit of everything
Well,
at any time.
if you believe Peacemaker, you know what his power is. But I'll let
That
you finish
right,
your
that
thought.
and why would I not believe John Cena? I've lived my life by his creeds, but I found, like, even the specificity of the superheroes, like, kind of powers, their abilities were great. I love it. I'm so sorry. The character he's like the Route 66.
Oh, Tripper. Yeah. He
Tripper.
just has an amulet that can find where people need to be going is his only power.
I want that to be, so please get this out there, get enough copies so people buy this, so I can dress up as him in a month for Halloween, and people know who I'm being. That's really my goal. I always like seeing myself, and I don't want to, have to dress up as Fat Thor again. So this is my next superhero I really feel like I can become. So, but Jordan, great work on this. It's off to a start, and I definitely thank you for first 2 issues, and 3rd issue plus. I'm definitely I will pull myself over to our local comic book store on Olive to make sure I get the next ones.
It's okay. You could have said House of Secrets. You could
Oh,
still buy the first one that's in stores now if you really want to be able to.
Fine.
We can
I think
we can
Jordan's
both
worth
go
it.
together after the show today.
We have a foil cover. I'm just saying.
Let's do it.
So,
oh my
gosh, can we get a Frosty afterwards?
Yeah,
Please?
well, Wendy's isn't that far. Okay, sorry. I'm actually trying to think. I'm like, wait, what character was named Frosty? Oh, wait, I'm being an idiot. Michael, I wanted to give you a chance to talk about. You can start. You can sing the praises of Crab Louie again if you like, but anywhere you'd like to go as you talk about the alternates.
Well, I noticed when I was reading it, it very much felt like it could have come out in like 1993. Like the way the artwork is. It's very nostalgic and fun. I definitely can relate to these characters. My life used to be very exciting. I went from being like a editor of like multiple paparazzi agencies, working for Britney Spears, and now I'm just like in Memphis, like, oh, what am I gonna have for dinner? So like, yeah, I definitely get the reminiscing of the heyday and trying to figure out what to make of it and what it all means, with your life moving forward. I think it's very relatable to a lot of people. I am a big fan of Crab Louie. Despite all the cat videos I post in my Instagram stories, the crab is my favorite character. I love that you did get scientifically correct. You gave him a larger claw because all crabs have a larger claw. I thought that was really fun. I like how he gives me like Hellboy vibes, but like sweeter, kind of like you want to like hug him.
Well, Ben Grimm, we've tried to throw in.
Okay.
But
yeah. And there's a little bit of just his physique is a little bit like Hellboy as well. Not similar to the character, but it's that presence.
Yeah.
And I think that what you're saying about Ben Grimm is perfect because he really is the monster with a heart of gold, that the blind woman falls in love with because she doesn't see him as a big pile of bricks. So that might be why we all Crab Louie. And Michael, as someone whose life was never as interesting as yours, slowed down. It's it is that like, oh yeah, I remember my life before I had kids. Oh my God, I'd be like, hey, do you want to go to this thing tonight? I'm like, tonight? You want me to go somewhere now that I didn't plan a week and a half ago? Well, what time does it start? 9:30? I'm going to be in bed. No, I'm not.
Do I have to put on pants?
Yeah, well, usually.
No, that was me before kids, actually.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's right. So Jordan, how many issues is the series? And what's the schedule for the alternates?
It's a 4-issue limited series. It'll be monthly. They're all done, so there's not going to be any shipping surprises.
Yeah.
Our editors very good.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're still waiting for the last part of that Kevin Smith Daredevil from like 20 years ago. I think that yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
So no shipping delays.
Okay, so it's done. Great.
It's done. And then we are going to be returning to the Minor Threats main book for volume 2, and then there's a bunch of other minis planned. So we are spinning off, we're expanding, but they're all, I think, as you can feel, have their own tone, their own flavor. We never want to repeat ourselves, and I think that's what we tried to do here, was tell a very different kind of story that doesn't kind of infringe on the main story with playtime.
This also,
and I think that it in no way did it feel like, all right, this is just like Minor Threats. You know what I mean? It is definitely a very unique story, which is the way that it should go. Like when you get the second movie, it shouldn't just be like, well, what if we take the first movie and put it in an airport? Oh wait, that didn't work, did it? No names. We're going to talk about our favorite alternates in a minute, but some comments from the chat. Kame Egan, we were talking about on-screen deaths. I cried buckets at the end of VT, but
good news, he lives. He lived.
That's what made her cry. She's actually very.
He was
dark.
hoping he was dead. That the filth, that disgusting, wrinkly alien.
The emotion at the end of ET is nothing compared to what some of us feel about Drew Barrymore right now. But that's not this show. Iron Giant comes to mind. It's a good one. And I don't know what our text is. I'm not going to pretend I know what
that's
it is.
The horse.
That's the horse.
Okay, that's what you were talking about. All right, I'm sorry. Now I remember. And all right. So, Jordan, do you have any favorites in terms of alternate reality, alternate timeline Marvel characters that immediately come to mind?
Am I stepping on anyone if I say Age of Apocalypse? I got a million others.
No. It's okay.
It's in my list.
I actually think we all have Age of Apocalypse, and for the reason that I knew the other guy's answers. I actually decided that, in talking about Age of Apocalypse, I was going to focus on specifically the Wolverine with the claw hand, but I was at the same time, I was thinking like, well, what's the ultimate alternate? And that would be, of course, the great action figure for the Age of Apocalypse Wolverine, who we see on our screen.
Look at him, handsome little devil.
And Jordan, before you talk about Age of Apocalypse, you did a story for Marvel Unlimited last year that was set during Age of Apocalypse.
I'm the last person to play in the Age of Apocalypse, as far as I know. We did a Krakoa set story about Xavier, who obviously wouldn't have been in Age of Apocalypse because Age of Apocalypse happened because he was murdered by his time traveling son back in time. But so the idea,
that's the ultimate time traveling whoopsie doodle. You go back in time to kill your dad's greatest enemy and you accidentally kill your dad. That's a whoopsie. Yeah,
mistakes happen, and you alter all of history and time, and Apocalypse seizes power and turns the place into a nightmare. So the book we did was kind of, Xavier was the one character we never would have seen there. So kind of It's a Wonderful Life with Xavier in the Age of Apocalypse, to experience what a world without him would be like. And we got to kind of bring in some of the other characters who you didn't get to see in the original 90s series who were created since. So characters from the Morrison run, the Krakoa era, and reimagine them and create this new fun continuity. But to kind of take a step back, this came out, I think, in 96, and this was before the internet, and or the internet was there, but it wasn't ruining stories, 6 months out. So they just canceled all the X books, and I bought it hook, line, sinker. I'm like, that's it. That's the end of the X-Men. Of course, why wouldn't they cancel their most popular book? Something must be wrong. And then that was it. And you didn't know. You just knew the X books were ending. And then they released this little ash can that called like After X's Age of the Apocalypse. And all of a sudden, you just saw these images of all your favorite heroes. And Wolverine was missing a hand. Cyclops was missing an eye. And Nightcrawler was a villain. And Sabretooth was a hero, and it was like everything was turned upside down. And I think it was shocking. And you just assumed that this is what the X universe was from here on out. Like that, you didn't know otherwise. You weren't kind of hip to the marketing tools they have now for doing these every once in a while as a crossover. So as a kid, I was like, oh my God, this is what X-Men is. This is crazy. It's dark. Half the characters are dead. It's bleak. It's post-apocalyptic, literally. And it was amazing. And all the X books got renamed. They ran for 4 issues in this universe. They were all telling one big story where Bishop was the only one who remembered the old universe. So he was trying to get the M-Cron crystal and revert things back. And Magneto was running the X-Men, and his team was sent out on this. And Gambit had his own X-Force team. And Cyclops was working for Sinister and was a bad guy. It was everything was upside down, and it was one of the most exciting crossovers because, as far as you knew, this is what X-Men was going forward.
Yeah, and it was supposedly the story, I guess, was inspired by an episode of X-Men the Animated Series where they did prior to that they did something with this. I was reading about that online. I have not done the research to back it up, but there is a similar story. I don't know what the timeline is. It's interesting that you talk about that because let's see, when they did this, I don't know, it was like right around the time I started college, I think. So I did not buy it hook, line, and sinker. I was like, all right, this is a gimmick, but it's a really cool gimmick. And it's during this time that at a con, I met Chris Claremont for the first time. And I told him that Uncanny X-Men 153, which is known as Kitty's fairy tale. It's a bedtime story she tells Ileana when she's still a child, before she's a teen, and before she's a child, and before she dies, and before she's a teen again, etc. And he's like, oh yeah, but they undid it. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, they undid everything. I'm like, is he fucking kidding me right here? Like, it's like, it's all gonna go. Like, I know you're not writing it anymore. You're just doing Sovereign 7 for DC at the time, but I'm like, yeah, all right, but it's like, the story's going to run its course, but at no time did that take away from just how cool these variations of the character was. It would have been interesting, like, at what point going through with this, if they knew 52'd this, if Age of Apocalypse, this is it going forward, at what point, how long would they have been like, yeah, I think we got to go back to the X Mansion and, all the stuff that people are expecting. But it's how they don't really, that's why I was excited when you had your story, because it had been a while since I'd read anything in the Age of Apocalypse universe, so it is fun to get to revisit it,
Yeah, it's just it's the ultimate what if one for me involving X-Men. And, I think the other thing that we have talked about, even looking at these, is that they had the best artists working on this at the time.
Yes.
Like Joe Madureira, Steve Epting. So you're getting all these incredible redesigns. Like just the costuming alone was so exciting because it really felt like a different world. And the costumes kind of matched that. And then the legacy of it, which is it was so popular, X-Man came over and had
so
his own
the Nate Gray variant of Nathan Summers, or where's the Charles in his name?
Nathan,
Charles is his middle
Charles
name.
Dayspring, Ascani Summers, I believe this is entirely.
Cable. Just imagine Cable's monogram towel. Just the cost to get a new one made. Yeah, so he was that younger version, and I legitimately I was glad that they continued that character's story, because you really felt like, okay, well, obviously when this goes back to normal, we're not going to see him again. And I thought that was actually pretty smart, you know, to like, well, there's actually a decent amount of storytelling to do here. And Michael, Jordan took your first one. I'm gonna present another one that you sent to me. Except I've got so many windows. You know, it's a little. It's like I'm looking at that one right now. So we'll see what I've got next for you. Okay. So we had this, and then yes, I thought this is what I wanted to be the next one. I'm not that familiar with this because I was still buying comics on a monthly basis when X-Men 2099 happened. But it was at the point where I was like trying to buy less of them because I was, you know, let's just say I was spending money on other things, but also, you know, the amount of time to sit and actually read them was becoming a little bit more elusive. But I always thought that they looked cool, but I know almost nothing about X-Men 2099. So talk a little bit about what it is that drew you to this book and why it came to mind when I asked you this question.
Well, in 1993, unlike you know, I wasn't spending all my money on like hookers, but
only part of it.
They were known as back page girls in New York. That's all right. Go ahead.
For me, this was just something that was kind of like unheard of. I really just enjoy. I thought Spider-Man 2099 was really cool too, but this one so much more. For some reason, I found it really neat that we had no original X-Men, and the only real tie to the team from over 100 years before was basically a character named Cerebra, which was basically kind of like well, not really, but you know, a nod to Cerebro.
Sure. Yeah.
And everyone's powers were like kind of similar but different. Quicksilver, you know, has always been probably my favorite male character in the X-Men universe, and so Mean Streak was a real big. He was my favorite. I thought their outfits were really cool. Like when, you know, grunge was reigning supreme, like these outfits and these looks are just fit in like really well. But like back then I was like 8 years old, I think, when this came out. So I didn't really read them all. You know, I wasn't like collecting them every week. It was more like every once in a while when I would see the book, you know, at a store, a comic book shop, I'd get a few of them. And flash forward to many years later, I have every issue of X-Men 2099, every one shot, every Spider-Man book that like where they're incorporated, X-Men Blue. It's I don't know. It's just such a little.
Let's not forget Generation X.
Oh. Man, I have every Generation X. I'm the same way with Gen 13. I'm very much like this period of time. Every Superboy, this period of time was really golden for me. And this was just so special and new and different, and no one was doing anything like this. So it just kind of all of that kind of all together made me really, really like this book. And I'm such a strange bird when it comes to comics. When I really, really love something, I find it really hard to finish it because I don't want it to be over. And I've never read to the very end of X-Men 2099 because I don't want it to be over. I think it's so fun. I don't know. Did any of you guys catch that book at all? I'm sure you did, Jordan.
I was all over it. I bought figures. I was all in, and I was like you. I remember seeing the cover, and I was like, "Oh, these must be like Angel's kid. Must be the red guy with wings." And they're like, "No, this has nothing to do with that. This is its own thing, and it's just taking kind of the vibe of X-Men and the feared and hated thing, and moving it into this future, and we're gonna kind of carve our own path." I thought that was really unique to not tie it so directly, because you know, you have Days of Future Past, all these things. We're like, oh, there's, you know, Franklin Richards grown up, and there's some kid I know of two mutants, and this was like, no, we're our own thing. So I loved it.
Yeah. Eric, you sent me a few, and one that I latched onto was it's a very interesting period. Obviously, people are fully aware of the original Secret Wars, and there's also, that time period brought us the Fantastic Four with She-Hulk.
Mhm.
And what people might not necessarily remember if you weren't reading comic books at the time, She-Hulk was in the Fantastic Four because Ben Grimm decided he wanted to stay on the Beyonders planet, and he had the ability to turn back and forth between Ben Grimm and the Thing, so it was obviously very very appealing. And it was such an interesting, they did it for, I mean, our real world time, it was a couple of years,
Yeah,
that he was there. And it was really an interesting idea because clearly there were no plans for that planet after that. So you chose kind of a great cover for our audio audience. It's really just sort of him isolated, saying, "Don't leave me, Tariana. Don't leave me on the stinking planet alone," because that was sort of the other reason, is exploring a brand new planet where you can control your abilities. If you've got a lady friend, it makes it a little bit more fun. But so I thought this was an interesting choice. It's technically the main reality, the main continuity of Marvel, but it is a completely alternate location that they go to here. So talk a little bit about that, Eric.
Sure. Yeah. At the end of Secret Wars, Ben, and Christian, please correct me if I'm wrong, Ben's the only one from all of them who opts to stay, right?
Yeah, no, he's literally the only one. And just to interject, the time where he decides to go back to Earth, the final page of that issue, there was no reason for that world to exist anymore. So that world basically disintegrates and is gone because the Beyonder's like, all right, well, I'm not entertaining Ben Grimm anymore. So I guess we'll get rid of it, which was such a weird thing to wrap my head around, as I don't know how old I would have been, but it's probably, like 10 or 11 at that point. But I'm sorry, finish your thought, Eric.
Yeah, I think I was just a year or two past. I think I'm only a little older than you. And so for me, like I remember reading that, and it was heartbreaking. Like Ben stays there because it's almost like utopic for him.
Yeah.
He gets to do this thing he's always wanted to do back on Earth, and he can't. And the end of it, I remember, floored me because this was one where I just kept reading. And again, I was such a fan of Secret Wars that this was a thing that sort of kept it alive, if you will, a little longer. So I guess in some ways I was a completist. And but his story was really great on that planet. But then, right, he loses his, he falls in love up there, even though he had the girlfriend back home, which also led to him having to come home and do some explaining, I remember, which didn't go great.
One of the iterations of Ms. Marvel, who herself became a thing, basically. She, ended up being Rocky as well. So yeah, it's tough to be Ben Grimm.
Yeah. And at the end too, this idea that in some ways they were never real, like to begin with. Like if they could disappear so quickly, then were they ever there to begin with? So it's like this 1-2 punch of he loses her, but then this idea he never really had her, so to speak. I just remember, like, emotionally. I mean, it's been a lot of years since I've read this specific issue. I kind of want to read it now, to be honest. I think I probably still have it somewhere here, and it was just one of those, like, I remember thinking about it for days later. This bigger thing, like, what if love is fiction? It's like waking up from a dream where you meet someone and then you wake up and they never existed at all, and really powerful stuff. And I think that's where also, like, I personally am not as versed or as interested in sort of the alternate universes. I mean, I love me my Spider-Verse, but I didn't necessarily gravitate towards those titles set in the distant future. But this was one that I thought managed to sort of do a kind of a what if question, like what if Ben got to live his dream. The problem with living a dream, you wake up, and very powerful, so powerful. All these years later, you and I both remember this pretty clearly, and it's been 30 plus years, over 30 years, closer to 40 since this title. So that's sounded pretty good writing, and hopefully 40 years from now, by the way, They're talking about alternates and minor crimes and
yeah.
everything else too. You know,
Minor threats. Come on,
minor threats. I'm so
crime
sorry.
sounds
Minor
like
crimes is that show. Wait,
a new Law and Order spinoff.
Yes.
Law and Order.
No,
Minor
no.
Crime.
Actually, I was talking about minor crime. I want them
Actually-
to talk about minor crimes.
Actually, I think they have a major crime show. Just imagine if it was Law and Order Minor
Medium
Crimes.
crime.
Lower stakes.
It was it was like, oh, I accidentally shoplifted. I didn't mean to. Let me pay for it. I'm so sorry.
Dun, dun, dun.
Well, I'm gonna lighten the mood a little bit and go with an alternate character that I loved as a kid.
Oh,
He
yeah.
was silly.
Peter
Peter Porker, the spectacular Spider-Ham, had his own series from Star Comics, which was the kiddie version. And they had Alf, they had Ewoks, and they had Heathcliff. And at one point, they also had Spider-Ham. So long before I had any idea who John Mulaney was, and before John Mulaney had probably even written a joke, I'd already loved Spider-Ham, and his inclusion in that first Spider-Verse. I just couldn't believe that I was getting to see him, and I felt like they nailed it because it was such a silly idea, and it was really like a gag. I feel like maybe he showed up as like 3 pages in which was like their comedy parody book. I actually don't know the first appearance of Spider-Ham. Maybe I should, but I mean, you can see what we're looking at right there is issue 12. They got at least a year. I think they got about 2 years of Spider-Ham comics. And I thought it was great. It was just silly. And I think, the ability to kind of laugh at characters that I liked. And this is not the only variant of Spider-Man that I'm going to mention. We won't go through everybody's entire list and spend as much time. But Jordan, if you want to talk about a couple more maybe that come to mind as we talk about this. I actually don't know what kind of time constraints you might have. So I don't want to rush you, but I also don't want to drag down your whole day while we talk about this.
No, happy to talk about a few other ones. Squadron Supreme is a huge one for me. I'm a big Mark Gruenwald fan. Yeah. And, letting him do his Justice League in an, alternate reality Marvel, and then having those characters cross over. And they were used really well recently in the Jason Aaron Avengers run as kind of the Devil's Justice. Mephisto was running them, I think, or something like that. And then,
I have Squadron Supreme #1 by Mark Grunwald ready to go because they were on my list too. So
sorry, I'm stepping.
I don't know.
No. It's good. It for time's sake, it's great that there's all this commonality. Yeah. And I love the idea that it was like, you can kind of just look at them, even if people aren't familiar with them. You can see like, oh, I know what DC characters these are like, and they don't look similar enough to anyone where there might be a lawsuit. But it's like, oh, it was such a cool idea. And I remember they did like the 12-issue Walt Simonson Eternals around the same time. It was a really adventurous time for like people are going to commit a year of their time to some of these interesting and different kind of stories,
Well, I think the story got really overshadowed by Watchmen. It comes out, I think, the same year, and they're playing with a lot of similar ideas. But I think if you haven't read this, it's a gem to go back and read. And then both Nighthawk and Hyperion have become pretty big characters in the Marvel universe. Hyperion was an Avenger in the Hickman run, I think. Nighthawk's gotten his own miniseries pretty recently, I think. So they ended up they were toys that stuck. They were brand new inventions in a brand new world, and I think a lot of writers were excited to go back and play with them, and they became Avengers foils and and things like that. So I think, if you haven't discovered this story, it's a great hidden gem.
Yeah, I agree. And, Daniel Drew, I'm going to just probably need to text you whenever I'm conversationally not able to come up with something. Daniel looked it up. So Spider-Ham's first appearance is Marvel Tales, Tails. I do remember this, starring Peter Porker, the spectacular Spider-Ham. It was a one-off before they gave him his own series. I personally, as somebody who would never poo-poo a pun, I would have stuck with Marvel Tails for every issue. I would have kept calling it Marvel Tales. But back to Squadron Supreme. Yeah, I was, it was one of the first ones I thought of. and I think it's kind of a great, and it always reminds me of the there's an issue of Quasar who shows up in my list where he's having a race of all the fastest Marvel characters, and then a guy comes from a different dimension, and his uniform is ripped to such an extent, and he has complete amnesia, and he has no idea who he is, but he decides he'll run in this race. And it was such a genius way to get the Flash to run into the race, because he's like, yeah, this guy, I don't know what his name is. He doesn't even know what his name is. But hey, you want to run in a race? Yeah, I'm really fast. Okay, great. Oh, okay, you want to go home? Yeah. So I don't know. I just thought it was a fun workaround, and this is the ultimate workaround. I'm like, yeah, but what if Superman visited Captain America? What would that be like? Years before we got Marvel versus DC, obviously.
Yeah. Well, that leads me to my next one, which is the Amalgam universe.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is smushing superheroes together. So you had Superboy and Spider-Man was Spider-Boy. You had Wolverine and Batman was Darkclaw. There was X-Patrol was Doom Patrol and X-Men. It was really fun. I actually liked it better than the Marvel vs. DC crossover, actually.
Oh yeah.
I have a lot of those comics. And Magneto's like running the X-Men, and
it's the Metal Men.
Magneto and the Metal Men, or that's such a fun
thing.
I remember, we won't probably get until Disney buys DC.
No. Disney throws Warner Brothers a lifeline. It's like, you're practically walking distance. You want us to just buy the water tower that the Animaniacs live in, and the whole thing. And what I remember about Amalgam is there's like the image of Superman, and he's holding Mjolnir and Captain America's shield at the same time, and stuff like that. Look, there's times where fan service should not be something to turn your nose up at. Sometimes it's just great, and it's like, it's awesome, and you're like, yeah, this is what I want, getting all these kind of things.
Well,
Michael,
it didn't overstay its welcome, because it was there were just one issue, one shots of like, wouldn't this be fun? Here, we're just going to throw you into this continuity that never existed, and we're done. The gag's over,
Michael, what are a couple of yours that you want to make sure we talk about? And you can feel free to just kind of go through all of them. Really.
I would have mentioned the Amalgam instead of my last one that I sent you. I don't know if you even want to make mention of Croaky.
We'll get to Croaky, but so one that you sent is Spider-Punk, who I think a lot of people discovered for the first time in the second Spider-Verse movie. Yeah.
He's become like a real big fan favorite. Like when they do variants with him, they're usually 1 in 50, 1 in 100. That was a 1 in 100. That's $100 comic book. That is one that I wish I had, but I don't. The cover artist, he just really outdid himself on the whole. I think it was a 5-issue series, but basically, Spider-Punk is another Timeline's version of Spider-Man and Prowler put together, and he's a rock star Spider-Man, and he is my favorite Spider-Man. He is me if I was Spider-Man. I just love him. I don't want to.
Well, you're saying if you were Spider-Man, but you're a hero to all of us. And talk about Gen Next.
Yeah, this kind of touches on what Jordan was saying earlier about what.
By the way, let me zoom in on the credits there. Look who's responsible for Gen Next. Is Chris Claremont. Yes. Friend of show.
Yeah. Chris was the creator or mastermind writer behind Gen Next, which is basically what Jordan might have thought X-Men 2099 was going to be. It's the son of Gambit, and Rogue is their leader. You get Emma Frost and Scott Summers' child. You get Storm's kid. You get Polaris and Colossus, which that makes a lot of sense when you think about the metal. You get their kid. You get Franklin Richards' son. It's really short. They did two runs of it. I think they were both 5 issues each. So I think to read the whole series, it would be 10 issues. And they never even have a team name. It's not a typical normal superhero comic book thing. Lines are kind of more blurred. But that's just the kind of thing that I just live for when it comes to futures.
So,
I
you're saying there's only about 10 issues. If and I could put in the ask, if we were to do an interview with Claremont just about Gen Next, how long do you think he could talk about those 10 issues?
I have no idea what he thinks about it. It was a little bit ago. It wasn't that long ago.
You never know. Sometimes you get the answer. Sometimes you get the answer of like, well, it was a paycheck. But I feel like it wouldn't be. But you never know. It's true. You could get that answer.
Christian, it would begin with us. No, Christian, it would begin with us interviewing him and end with our children finishing the interview. Black cast next.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. You joke, but I've thought about it. This is who you were talking about. Is what do you call alligator Loki or crocodile Loki?
I looked it up. His name is Croaky. I guess
his name is Croaky.
Oh my gosh! I threw that in just for laughs because everyone knows how much I despise the MCU Loki.
The Tom Hiddleston Loki. You like the Prince of Lies from the comics?
Don't?
Yeah, it's I don't know. I don't know what we can do with him. But yeah, so that was the list you sent me, and Eric, we'll kind of scroll through.
Do whatever you gotta do. It's all good.
No. It's I want to get to some of them, and that was the one we showed earlier. And then as you described, you can see the hot Nicholson-esque Doctor Doom, which that's just actually from Secret Wars. That's allegedly what his face would look like if it wasn't all burned. So that's the very handsome, but you're 100% right. He does look like Jack in The Shining.
And
God.
He does. This in the Thing series, it's Battle World, and then Battle World leads to the new Secret Wars, which was an alternate reality where Doom Doom runs that. So that's
not Secret Wars 2. Secret Wars 2 is the Beyonder with a mullet and like a Michael Jackson Thriller jacket, walking around trying to learn about
looking like a Miami Vice villain, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Spider-Man teaches him how to poop.
And yeah, that's true. And you had Old Man Logan, which my list includes film version Logan, which I was a huge fan of. But obviously, this is also phenomenal. The Hawkeye we get in this, and just some of the things that we don't have for obvious reasons in the on-screen version. Old Man Logan is definitely a great one. And then you have Superior Spider-Man, which isn't really. It's
I know it's
actual canon 616, but it is an alternate version of the character, and it's great to sort of what Jordan was talking about in terms of thinking that Age of Apocalypse was forever. Dan Slott always knew what he was going to do, but he loved that everybody thought, I can't believe you killed Peter Parker, and now Doc Ock is Spider-Man, and he's like, yeah, it is terrible that I did that, isn't it? Next question.
I don't know if you guys ever saw the Justice League episode. I think it was called The Great Brain Robbery, where Lex Luthor and Flash switch brains. I love that episode because it's the idea of what would Flash be like if Lex Luthor was at the wheel, and he's just causing chaos. And it also has one of the great jokes in the whole series where now I can finally see who the Flash is. He takes off the mask, looks at the mirror. I'm like, I have no idea who this is, which is a great payoff. Great. But anytime I feel like, I always like when, even I got a power pack just off screen here, like when they would switch powers, I always find that kind of, it's a really nice way to sort of almost like put a new fresh coat of paint on the content. So all of a sudden you put Doc Ock, and that was a really nasty version of Doc Ock too. I love the design of him. And so him all of a sudden being inside Peter Parker's body, I think it just opened up lots of great storytelling possibilities.
Very controversial entry you had here. People, this is one of the most hated panels in Marvel Comics history.
But you guys scroll down because there's a comparison I make that I think is actually pretty important.
So,
Because
so Hail
it's not-
Hydra from Captain America, and gave you all the Sergeant Slaughter heel turn feels when,
Oh
yeah,
my god.
Yeah,
it's
when-
crazy. Boy, the '80s were a wild time. What they were doing over at WWF, wasn't it?
when Sergeant Slaughter became an Iraqi sympathizer.
Yeah, I don't know.
Those
You
were
did
pretty
talk
dark
about
times.
Man Thing in Werewolf by Night, which you and I were lucky enough to see on the big screen. You talk about Zombie Wanda, and I had to make sure we showed the X-Men Origins Wolverine version of Deadpool, which
You mean real
that's
Deadpool?
that's the ultimate alternate. The fact that we ever got Ryan Reynolds as the Deadpool we got is definitely a little bit crazy, and it's, I think, important. And don't worry, I'll rush through my list to some extent, but I think the fact that you included one of what we know is one of Jordan's favorite characters, Turner D. Century.
And I had a very special message with that, which said, I'm going to start a letter writing campaign to make sure that one day Jordan gets that character in his stable, because I know you would do remarkable things with him. So this it begins here, begins now. Jordan Blum should be.
I appreciate it.
Bringing,
I really appreciate
you should
that.
be behind the bicycle.
One day. I mean,
whenever I hear Turner D. Century, I'm reminded of the fact that, like, one of the rules for the writers' room at SNL when they started was no silly names. You know, they felt like that's not their gimmick. And Turner D. Century is the silliest of names. However, it is also the perfect name. And no notes, no complaints for Turner D. Century. I think that we touched on the conversationally, we talked about the Days of Future Past, and I think that is it's a perfect, really, example of sort of the concept of the alternate timeline. What could happen, and Jean Grey had just died in the books, and yet she was alive. And so one of my biggest, and this is of no surprise to Michael, is of course Rachel Summers, who I know at different times has been known as Rachel Grey. But this era when she went from being the time traveling hound and then took over the Phoenix Force, going on to Excalibur, which is a very near and dear to my heart, Excalibur, because it had Rachel, it had Kitty, it had Nightcrawler. It was like they literally took my favorite X-Men out of the X-Men book and were like, well, what if they went and lived in England? I'm like, yeah, all right, I'm in for that, 100%. But in any case,
such a great cover, by the way.
Yeah, this so Uncanny X-Men 199, John Romita Jr. and the we talked about it last week, the just departed Dan Green did the inks on this. This is I showed Uncanny 207, I believe, last week, being one of my being my favorite cover of all time. This is way up there, and it's such a great image. She really doesn't wear that outfit for very long, but it's great in this image. And then the next issue has the trial of Magneto with the big M on his shirt, and you're like, who was thinking that was a good idea? But anyway,
no,
I digress. In that,
I think that should be my Halloween costume. Actually,
you should be Rachel Summers.
Phoenix! I thought you were saying Magneto.
Yeah. No. Did they make that in Burley?
Yeah.
Yes, so the skin tight mutant hound outfit. Yeah. Yes, they do.
I want to see Eric in spandex.
Michael,
right. Well, there's always time for that.
See me in all sorts of things.
It's been hiding in plain sight the whole time, but this has been behind me. But the Japanese version of Spider-Man, and there's a great whatever that Disney Plus series is, like the sort of like about the characters. There's an episode of it about this, and they interview the actor in the present day. I mean, it's preposterous. There's no tie to Spider-Man. I mean, he's fighting giant robots. If I wasn't worried about copyright strikes, I would have had to play some footage from it. But I think honestly,
the theme song's amazing.
As Vince Scully said on a very important night to Eric and myself, if a picture is worth 1,000 words, Spider-Man kicking a guy in a rubber suit is 100% it.
Is that Crab Louie?
Oh my!
An alternate version. Yes, an
alternate version of Crab Louie.
But he's been adopted into the comics now. He was. Am I wrong? Was he not in Spider-Verse in one of the crossovers?
I think in the book he showed up. I just wanted him in the movie so badly, and
Yeah.
when he wasn't
I
in
bet
the
you they did
sequel,
too.
He's
I'm
probably
still-
in there somewhere, honestly. I mean, there's so many Spider-Men in that, so I wouldn't be
The
shocked.
but
the
go ahead,
most
Michael.
the issue right before, well, they call it the first issue of where Spider-Boy is, which we all know the original Spider-Boy was an amalgam property.
Yep.
But the issue before Spider-Boy was introduced just a few months ago, I have the variant cover of the issue before, and it features that Japanese Spider-Man with a giant kaiju. So I do feel like they recognize him as part of their continuity.
What you're trying to say is game recognizes game. And what I want to end with is my least favorite variant. I have talked about this before. I have used this cover before. Michael knows what it is. What If might as well have been called Hit or Miss. I'm talking about the series. And it was a lot of sometimes I felt like it was like the old Magnet poetry where they took a character name and then there was a lot of different things and then they just put it together. And it's this one. What if Wolverine was Lord of the Vampires? I'll tell you what if. I don't care. But they did a sequel to it, which is what if Wolverine was Lord of the Vampires during Inferno? Because it has this cover, and of course the Punisher's on it too. This is like, 93 somewhere in there. So this is like, it's got everything you need. It's got Frank Castle in the back. It's got Wolverine, biting the neck of Jean Grey. So sometimes alternate realities should stay really where they are. That's my thought. But of course the alternate that we're all fond of is The Alternates. And Jordan, it is available now wherever comics can be found. And if for some reason your store doesn't have it, I'm sure you can say, hey, you know what you should do is you should order The Alternates. Or
if you don't have a store, it's available on Comixology on Amazon, so you can read it digitally.
That's good. I'm glad you're able to plug your product properly. I actually didn't even think of that. What a dummy. So,
I never know if we're supposed to plug that, but I'm going to anyway because I just want people to read it. That's the big thing.
Right. It's like during that time period when movies were in theaters, but then also streaming. It was now in theaters and on HBO Max. It was like, oh, we don't necessarily want everybody to know. Jordan, thank you so much for your time. If people want to continue the conversation with you about the alternates, some of the alternate reality characters we discussed, where can they find you? You're still on Twitter now that it's X, right?
I only refer to it as Twitter.
Yes,
I hate it. I hate that place, but I'm there. If you need me at Bloom Jordan, I will respond. I'm also on all those other ones, same handle. I hate social media, but I'm there.
Yeah, it is a necessary evil. I find that there can be good things about it, and it's very useful for promoting things. I have a lot of shows that I want people to know about, and it is the best way to do it. Obviously, when you have a new book out, that is the perfect spot for it. Jordan, thank you for always being so generous with your time. We will let you go, and I'm going to navigate some of the chat before we end the show. But thank you so much for joining us.
This was awesome. Always fun to hang and talk comics with everyone here.
Thanks, Jordan.
All right, absolutely. And that's our pal Jordan Blum. And again, The Alternates is available everywhere. I don't know about you guys, but I am. Oh, this is funny because Daniel Drew at the beginning of the chat, he actually told us, because this was sort of lingering. This was our cliffhanger from last week. He successfully met Got Stuff Signed and got photos with Chris Claremont, Brian Michael Bendis, and David Mack on Friday. Saw a friend I'd not seen since December on my birthday on Saturday. That's a great weekend, honestly. And I'm very glad.
Couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Yeah, I'm glad that you got the pictures you wanted. You got to see the people. The only thing missing would have been if the Marvels had opened on Sunday. That would have been maybe the Thursday before. That would have been the perfect weekend for you, Daniel. If you previously sent in some of your favorite alternate reality characters. Please let us know as we start to wind things down here. And this was Daniel talking about the amalgam characters from the Superman Batman 2009 issues. It's okay. We can talk about the other universes occasionally. Doomstroke, which was Doomsday and Deathstroke. Yeah, I think that when you play with it, and I had mentioned, I sort of brushed past Days of Future Past because it's such a it's a fixed point in time, as they might say, and it's so much revolves around that story, and that's why I just focused on Rachel stemming from there. And hey, Michael, do you have any good variant covers with Rachel on it? Maybe dressed up to go anywhere fancy, or am I remembering?
I didn't pull anything to bring onto the show today, but I will say, since we had just mentioned that Born Again, that X-Men cover with Rachel Summers, Phoenix, 2020 X-Force did a great homage version of that, making that look a little more realistic, which I highly recommend. If any of you haven't seen it or own it, take a look at it. It's really cool.
Yeah. But because really I have this one ready to load, we'll take a look at this one for sure. So, yeah. All right. Well, I think that look, we've more than overstayed our welcome. Thank you to everybody who's still in the chat. Thanks for Jordan for sticking around more than an hour. The having some stuff with the Marvels to talk about, threw off my game plan a little bit, but I'm excited to talk about that. I'm excited to talk about everything. And I'm also excited for next episode, which at the moment, the plan is that we will follow up our very popular Hulk episode by watching the 2011 Incredible Hulk with Ed Norton, as promised, as requested by Michael Shirley. There's a couple of other special shows in the works that I can't confirm at this moment. So we are going to do that as of right now, next Thursday. Sorry, what day do we do the show? Next Wednesday. Daniel Drew wanted to make sure I saw this comment. So sad we never got AOA, Age of Apocalypse, and animation after that Wolverine and the X-Men animated series ended in an Age of Apocalypse cliffhanger. I'm going to admit that I haven't seen all of Wolverine and the X-Men. I definitely checked it out because I was interested, but I'm kind of interested in seeing that right now. Now that
it's on Disney Plus.
Of course it is. And thank you, Daniel, for calling that to my attention. And, there's only so many things for me to do, at once. I was spinning a few plates today while I was trying to find some pictures and having great conversation with our pal, Jordan Blum. Cam Egan throws in. I'll let you go in a second, Eric. Cam Egan, I can't wait to see Kamala's family again and their interactions with Fury, Monica, and Carol. That is something I hadn't thought about. Just, Nick Fury, busting in the door to their house, and Kamala's dad, might not. And,
as long as Nick Fury's wife is in it, that's all I care about now.
Don't get me started. Don't even get me started. Cami Egan says, I'll have to go pick up Jordan's comics as a birthday present for myself on Friday. Wait, it's Cami Egan's birthday on Friday. And did Daniel just say that it was his birthday last weekend? Happy birthday isn't in public domain. So we'll just say happy birthday. We'll do like a show with no budget and we'll sing for He's a Jolly Good Fellow. Or we'll just say happy birthday to all of you. Eric Conner, when and where can people find you?
When is all the time over at Eric Conner on X, as well as an Instagram. And if anyone's listening is in the Valley, the Burbank Culture Arts Commission have a big fall festival September 30th. You can go to burbankarts.com to find out about it, but it should be fabulous. Screening Nightmare Before Christmas and having multiple bands and performers. So it will be a hoot, as the young kids say.
Is it at Johnny Carson Park?
It is at Johnny Carson Park in Burbank.
I'm almost positive I have somewhere to be with the family that night. It's the Mooncake Festival, so I was, very
damn you,
upset
Mooncakes!
because we're planning to have them see Nightmare Before Christmas on the big screen before Halloween, so that would have been perfect. So everybody else go except Michael because he's established.
Michael's welcome as well.
He's welcome, but he's not going to be able to go. It's not that he shouldn't go. Michael, if you would like to be found, where could that be?
You guys can find me on Twitter at, you guys ready? Michael X Shirley, and on Instagram where I am a little more active at I Hate Michael Shirley.
Absolutely. And of course, you can find me Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. If you like me, you're in the minority, but if you like me, you can check me out Tuesdays at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern on Who Are These Broadcasters over on the Who Are These Podcasts network. We had a pretty amazing collection of clips, and there's one in particular that I kind of had to see where the comedy afterwards went before I decided whether or not I'd be posting the link on social media. So you go ahead and check out that episode, and you tell me if you can pick out which clip. I will tell you it's very obvious which clip it is that I was like, "Ooh, where's this going to go?" So you can find that in a little bit more than an hour. There'll be an episode of the Blattcast. Remember that show? Streaming live on the Blattcast YouTube channel, BLADTCAST. We commemorate the 30th anniversary of the Chevy Chase show, and about an hour into it, we had only gotten through the first 15 minutes. So there's going to be a part 2, but part 1 will be streaming at 2:00 today. That's Pacific time, 5 p.m. Eastern, with my buddy Tom Kelly and Liam McEnany. We just going through that. And oddly enough, you guys will appreciate this. We were showing a clip from the Chevy Chase show that I had watched the clip a few times, and I saw somebody that I worked with there, and so I had to message him. I'm like, "You worked on the Chevy Chase show?" And he did, and he only had nice things to say about Chevy. So I was no longer interested in his conversation. So
what's like, Christian, I met someone who worked on Cop Rock, and I felt like I had met like someone who had seen God. Personally,
the amount of time. Yeah,
she gave me, in fact, because I was such a fan, it was like a mutual friend. She gave me a copy of the pilot, and then behind the scenes and bloopers and stuff. One of the greatest gifts. I only met her once, but I think I was the one fan of Cop Rock that she had ever met in her life. So
now I have to ask, and I know that we're creeping on an hour and a half, but are you ironically a fan of Cop Rock, or did you love?
No, I'm not. I haven't had that much head trauma in my time.
Okay.
No.
They're two very different conversations. One of them,
it's the most horrible thing ever. But so is the
one of them. I message your wife and try to set up an intervention. The other one is.
I got 3 scheduled this week. Don't worry about it.
All right, and we will be back next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, right here on Geekscape for more Marvel movie talk. We will be talking about the Incredible Hulk, which
with our guest Liv Tyler.
I can reach out. I can put out an ask, and I contend that it's better than the Ang Lee Hulk, but we will see. You let us know what you think in the comments. And of course, I can be found on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. That is all the time we have for now, but we will see you next time here on Marvel Movie Talk. And as the great Stan Lee would say, Excelsior!